If you are in your 20s or 30s right now, it is likely that you will live almost until the end of this 21st century. And we actually don't know how the world will look by then. But one thing is for sure, it will look completely different than it does now. So wouldn't it at least be interesting to know in which direction the journey is going? This is what Yuval Noah Harari is discussing in his latest book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. Just like his other two books, this one has become an international bestseller, but is it actually worth reading? Should you buy this book, and if you do so, what will you learn? The topics that Noah Harari tries to cover in his book are quite vast. He divides them into 5 parts: the technological challenge, the political challenge, despair and hope, truth, and resilience. And you might be thinking, well, this sounds rather vague, but bear with me for a second here and bear with Noah Harari, because he actually tries to break down the entire rest of the century in just 400 pages. So I think it's just fair that he looks at the big picture here. He then goes on and breaks down these areas into chapters, which together are the 21 lessons. And I think I'm not being unfair if I say that all of these chapters are quite depressing. They cover topics like disillusionment, liberty, inequality, nationalism, immigration, terrorism, war. And of course, it is not Noah Harari's fault that these are quite depressing topics. It is rather that we are facing really difficult problems in this 21st century. Just to give you an example, in the chapter where he talks about work, he points out that there's basically 2 different kinds of work that humans can do: physical work and mental work. Now, us human beings have already been moving away from the physical work for several decades now. We use big machinery, we have factory halls, we have automation and robots doing the majority of the physical labor. But Noah Harari says that in the future we might also be replaced when it comes to mental work. Right now we are using computers as a tool for our minds. They are much better at computing, especially big numbers and complicated algorithms, but we are still the ones in charge. But it is likely that within this 21st century, computer will become better at any kind of mental work that we are currently doing. So if we are getting to a point where robots are doing the physical work and computers are doing the mental work, how do we as humans fit in there? This is a really difficult question, and spoiler alert, there is no answer in this book. It is rather that we have to become aware of the problem now, so that we can use the next couple of years and decades to find a solution before we actually get to that point where we become obsolete. Smart people like Andrew Yang are already pointing out these issues that are gonna come our way sooner or later, and they are proposing different solutions, for example, universal basic income. And to be honest, this is kind of how the entire book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, works. Noah Harari throws out a difficult question, a big problem that we will face in the future, and he doesn't really give you an answer to how we can solve this. All he does is give you the context and the details of what is happening right now, why it is important that we think about these issues, and what could be possible ways of tackling this problem in the future. So don't expect clean-cut solutions to these major issues that we're facing. My understanding is that in order to find a solution to any problem, no matter how difficult, the first step is that you actually need to understand the problem. And this is exactly what Noah Harari is trying to help you with. And because he does that so incredibly well, I have to say that the book really lived up to the expectations that I had in this regard. There is, however, something that disappointed me about the book as well, and of course I don't want to keep that from you. You have to keep in mind that Noah Harari is a trained historian, and that of course qualifies him perfectly to talk about history as he did in his first book, Sapiens. But does it actually qualify him to talk about the future, as he does in this book? It is absolutely no question that Noah Harari is a big thinker and a great mind, but in some topics I just feel like he's not well equipped to discuss the topic in depth. When he talks about topics like technology, AI, or even immigration, he's just not the most knowledgeable person to listen to in the world. There's people who have literally spent their entire adult lives working in these fields, So if I want to get a really deep understanding of what it is all about, then I would much rather listen to them. I still think that Noah Harari is making a lot of really good points on those subjects. I just feel like everything he says you should take with a grain of salt. Another point that started to irritate me slightly, especially towards the end of the book, is that Noah starts to talk less generally and more about his own personal experiences. This becomes especially obvious in the very last chapter of the book called Meditation, in which he basically describes how he found meditation as a practice and how it benefits him in his life today. Now, I have absolutely nothing against meditation. I think it's a very valuable practice. And personally, I would love to hear more about what Noah Harari thinks about meditation and what his experiences are. But is it really a lesson for the 21st century? I don't know, I felt like he got a bit carried away there towards the end, and this part could have actually been edited more thoroughly. So now the final verdict, would I actually recommend buying and reading this book? Well, the answer is absolutely. I don't think the book is as insightful as his first book, Sapiens, but this is a very high benchmark. Even if this book doesn't quite reach that, it is still a very good and incredibly interesting book. And I feel like anyone who is interested in humanity's future, and quite frankly in your own future, should pick up that book and start reading. All of the problems that Noah Harari touches upon in this book will affect you and your children and your grandchildren. And I can say for myself that after finishing it, I did feel like I have a unique advantage over other people who have not read it, in the way I plan my life, in the way I plan my career, in the way I think about the future and what it holds for me. So if you want to get the same competitive advantage, definitely buy Noah Harari's 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And if you want to get a competitive advantage by watching more of my videos, then make sure to subscribe. You will learn more about personal development and how to live a happier and fulfilled life. I will see you in the next video.